Hi everybody, hope that you're having a good day. So today we're going to review your word parts and then start reading a new text. So you will have a quiz over the word parts that we've learned so far on Friday. It's going to be basically just a multiple choice test that goes over the 13 word parts that we've learned. So today, in order for you to review, I just have the link here to Quizlet. You can log into Quizlet and access your word set for Word Parts Unit 1. It should be on your homepage under Recent. If it's not, go over here and click on Sets, and then you'll be able to find it. And then you can review. So you could do flashcards if you want to. You can play one of the games. You could do any of the activities that you like. It's really up to you. But you want to spend about 10 minutes reviewing those words so that you're ready for the quiz on Friday. If you want to pause the video and go work on that and then come back, you're welcome to, or you can just go through the agenda and then work on everything afterwards. So the next thing we have is to complete your journal. So your journal for today is, what are 3 things that you are afraid of, and what would you do if you were forced to face your fears? So make sure you write at least 3 sentences with proper punctuation and capitalization to receive credit. The next text that we're going to be reading is dealing with fear and sort of what fear can do to our minds. So I want to get you kind of thinking about fears. Once you have submitted that, then you can move on to the text. And this is actually what's called a teleplay. So a teleplay is a script that is written for a TV show. What we normally do in class is we assign parts and everyone reads a part and we read the whole thing out loud with each other. That's a little bit difficult with virtual. So what we're going to have you do is actually watch a TV version of the story. And the benefit there is that this is a teleplay. So it was made with the intention of it being produced for a television show. So this is sort of the way it was intended to be seen. And it follows the text pretty closely. It's not 100%, but it does follow pretty closely. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to click the link here, and that will pull up the video. It should work for you all. I just uploaded it, so that's why it's still showing as being saved. But by the time that you all get on there, it should be working. And then you can click here to be able to read along in the text. Okay, so you can kind of have this open, maybe, in one window, and then have the video open in the other, and sort of look through as you are watching it, so you can kind of get the sense of the style of a teleplay. And you can also notice the things like all of these things that are in parentheses are what are called like stage directions or director's notes. So those would be the different like shots that the camera would take and the sort of background, like what the camera sees. So it's interesting to see how they translate those into the video itself. So while you're watching and reading along, I want you to be thinking about what are the parts of plot, because that's really what we're going to focus on here. This is a very short little episode, and so it's easy to break down the parts of plot. So really be thinking about that, because we're going to complete a plot diagram when you have finished watching. So go ahead and pause this video, go watch the episode and read along in the text, and then come back when you are done reading and watching. Okay, so now that you have finished reading and watching the video and the teleplay of Sorry Right Number, we are going to complete a plot diagram. So if you go ahead and click on this assignment, the first thing you're going to do is make a copy of this document. So when you click on it, it will force you to make a copy. And you can see that this is just our normal plot diagram, but with a few little additions. The first thing you want to do, like always, is to move this into your English 1 folder. And remember, you do that by clicking on the top and then looking for your English 1 folder and moving it there. That way you can find it again if you need to reference it, which you will, because we will be using this on a future assignment as well. Okay, so once you have moved this into your English 1 folder, then you're going to want to go ahead and fill out some of the basic information. So this is a plot map for, right number, and the author is Stephen King. Then you can also fill out some of this basic information, like your name. Okay. And so then you're going to start looking at the parts of plot. So the exposition is pretty easy to do because that's just where we start to understand what's happening in the story. So for the setting, you could put a family home in the US, right? It's not very specific where it's located. Your basic situation. So what's going on at the beginning of the story? It's a typical family night. Katie is on the phone and the kids are arguing about what to watch on TV. Okay, that's the basic situation that's happening. That's what they're setting up in the exposition. Obviously things change throughout the story, but that's where we are in the exposition. So for characters, you've got Katie, you have Bill, Connie, and Jeff. And the climate and mood at the beginning of the story is pretty easygoing, right? It's just like a family day, a family, night. They're all just at home. So that obviously changes throughout the story, but at the beginning, it's very calm, typical, right? Nothing too crazy is going on. Okay, so then the next thing that I would suggest doing is filling out the climax, because once you figure out what the climax of the story is, then you can fill in the rising action, the falling action, and the resolution. We know the resolution will be at the end of the story, but what pieces fall under rising action and what pieces fall under falling action really depends on what you identify as your climax. So we need to remember that the climax of the story is the turning point for the character. So, in the story, Katie hears someone sobbing on the phone. Okay, so at the beginning of the story, Katie gets a mysterious phone call, right? And so she's trying to figure out who the phone call came from. And then we learn that later that night, Bill dies of a heart attack. And so the climax of the story is going to be the point at which Katie is able to start to figure out who it was who called, right? Her primary conflict is her versus this unknown voice, right? She's trying to figure out who this unknown voice is. So look back in the text and see if you can identify a point at which she's either going to figure out who called or she's not going to be able to figure out who called. So if you look through the story, right, you've got the wedding, Polly, the daughter gets married after Bill has died. Then we see, Katie finds the movie, she puts it in. And then Katie, sort of in a trance, right, picks up the phone and starts calling. And then she's trying to warn her past self, right? So she has somehow managed to break the time-space continuum and call herself, and she's trying to warn herself about what's happening to Bill. So I would say something in this range here where she's crying and she's saying take him to the hospital. Okay, that's going to be our climax, because that's the point at which she's either going to understand who it was who called her at the beginning of the story or not, right? And so she's going to realize that somehow she has managed to, call herself from the past. So for the climax, you would want to put Katie tearfully picks up the phone and calls her past self. Okay, so that's going to be your climax. Now that's pretty close to the end of the story. As you can see, we've only got like half of a page left after that. So following action and resolution are going to be very short, because this is a suspenseful story. So when you have a suspenseful story, the action rises and rises and rises until it finally comes to a head at the climax of the story. So you can fill in then the rising action steps, the falling action steps, and the resolution. Okay. For protagonist versus antagonist, I would say our protagonist is definitely Katie. And then who or what is working against Katie? What do you think Katie is having? Katie has to deal with or overcome. So it's probably the phone call, right? So this would be an example of sort of like a man versus like a supernatural element, because the phone call comes and we don't really know who it came from at first. Okay. And then you want to think about the theme. So what is the author saying about life or the human condition? What message is the author trying to send? What has Katie learned through the process of the story? So you want to write like, it needs to be more than one word. Okay. So the author's message is ... and then what you think that the theme is. Okay. So once you have this all filled in, then you can submit it on Canvas, and we will continue to work with this plot diagram next time. And so make sure that it is in your English 1 folder as well as turned in on Canvas. Let me know if you have any questions.